Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. Well, everyone, I know I've been talking about trying to get a guest from New Zealand on to complete the English, trifecta thing that I've been working on. And now we finally have one. After all these podcasts, Ginny McArthur, she's coming to us all the way from New Zealand. She's a nutritionist as well as a trainer and a health coach, and she's going to be coming on here to basically share her journey, but most importantly, she's our current guest. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. It's lovely to talk to you. So I'm in Auckland in New Zealand, but I'm actually originally from England. So I've been here nearly 30 years, but I'm originally from the south of England.
I was going to say the accent, I was looking up like New Zealand accents and it didn't really, so I was like, but a lot of people, I think there is a lot of travel between like New Zealand, Australia, and England because it was a colony, so were you able to then what was the travel like? Wasn't it like easier to go down there? I don't know. I'm not that, all I knew is that it was based off of like, it was a penal colony in Australia, so yeah, I have no idea. But,
no,
yeah.
That was Australia. Don't say that to a New Zealand. Big trouble. So yeah, it's 36 hours for me to get home to England from here. So it's a long way, usually with a stop off in Singapore or Dubai or Japan or Hong Kong or something like that. So it's not easy to get home from here. But it is a colony, and it's still the Queen is still the sovereign of New Zealand. It's not a republic yet. So I think we've had Charles and Camilla over a little while ago, and I think we had Prince William and Prince Harry over a little while ago. So there's still, quite a feeling of belonging to the UK over here. But of course, there is that sector, like in Australia, that wants to move away and become a republic. But I basically married a Kiwi in New Zealand and ended up down here.
And for anyone out there, Kiwi is what they call people from New Zealand. So don't get all upset, but I got to ask, because I'm in Minnesota, where we have the worst winters, some of the worst winters in North America, where it's just absolutely brutal. What is the weather like in New Zealand today?
Well, it's raining at the moment, and it's sitting at about 20 degrees. So we're in our summer now. So our summer starts in December, and then it generally starts to heat up a little bit through January and February. And so we probably sit kind of mid to high 20s through our summer. But it can be quite humid, so the humidity can be quite bad in Auckland.
Yeah, I don't know how to convert that to Fahrenheit, but we are about a week away from hitting -10 Fahrenheit where I am, which is just dread. I think it's like -20 or something like that Celsius or so.
Yeah. So I think in Fahrenheit. So okay, so we probably sit 70s to 80s. I think I remember back from being in England. So we're kind of around there. Yeah.
God, you're making me so jealous. Well, now before I depress everyone with my winter woes, why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and motivated you to get in shape and adapt this lifestyle, and how that led to you becoming a health coach as well as a nutritionist and a trainer?
Okay. Well, I started off, actually, I rode horses for a living initially, and that's a really hard way to earn a living. Because you end up riding other people's problem horses. So I got beaten up quite a bit. I fell off quite a bit. When I came to New Zealand, I trained horses here and then sold them back to England. At the time, that was quite a profitable thing to do. But, for every good one that went to England, you had 2 or 3 bad ones. And so I got quite beaten up, and I had to have a couple of surgeries on my back. And it was actually during the rehab of one of those surgeries that I was referred to a personal trainer. And I'd always had a pretty poor body image. And although I was fit and I rode 9 or 10 horses a day, in my head, I was still overweight. I didn't like how I looked. In my late 20s and early 30s, I'd become bulimic. So I had quite a disordered relationship with food. And this personal trainer, she was awesome, and the idea was she was just going to get my core strong. But actually, I got a little bit hooked on the gym, and I went on and I did a couple of competitions. Like then they were called body sculpting, so they're a little bit like figure, not big bodybuilding for women, but they were a little bit probably like bikini is now. And I did a little bit of that. She referred me to a nutritionist who changed my life, and Basically, I guess I got fed up with being beaten up. I had another fall, and I decided to give up riding horses for a living. And I thought, oh heck, what am I going to do now? I was 40, and I decided that the personal trainer who'd helped me, she was great. She had a good gig, seemed like a good thing to do. So I went and qualified as a personal trainer, and I did that successfully for a couple of years. And you pretty soon realize that people can work their asses off in the gym, but if their food's wrong, they're not going to get the results. So I then went back to university and qualified as a nutritionist, because my mind had always been a bit messed up with food, so I'd always been fascinated by it. I knew the calories of everything. I'd done Weight Watchers, I'd done Jenny Craig, I'd done every blooming fad diet that was out there then, So I'd always had a passion and an interest, but coming from a place of being bulimic, and I wasn't a skinny bulimic, I was 90 kilos, so what's that? A kilo is 2.2 pounds. So you have to do the maths. So I wasn't a tiny little bulimic. I was big. I was quite big. So obviously wasn't doing it very well. But coming from that background, then training as a nutritionist was great, because I'd been through that whole emotional eating journey, which means I've been able to help a lot of my clients work through that. Coming from a place of experience, quite frankly, there were times I could have slipped my wrists over food. I was really messed in the head over the whole body image and food thing. So that was kind of where I came from, and I qualified, and I then got hooked on running, and I actually ran 8 marathons, and I wanted to do some ultra marathons, but started to have problems with stress fractures and stuff. And so I'd kind of gone away from, like I said, you had done those couple of bodybuilding shows or body sculpting shows, but then got sucked into that whole cardio thing, and I was still weight training, but probably not as much as I should have been. And then had a big injury, big blowout on my knee. I had to have a big operation, really couldn't run anymore, or not at that level anyway. So I decided to go back into the gym. And I guess the last 4 or 5 years now, I've been back training with weights in the gym 5 or 6 days a week. I've been back into competing. My biggest thing was to compete as a 60-year-old, because I think, if you can still get on stage in a pair of sparkly shoes and a bikini, like a pair of transvestite shoes and a bikini at 60, that's got to be cool. So my motivation is to really help other women live their longest, happiest, healthiest lives and feel good about themselves, and use my journey to help to motivate them to do that. So that's kind of a little bit about what I'm about. I also, I don't know whether you're interested or not, but another big part of my journey was when I turned 60. My mother had died of cancer at 63. Her sister had died at 48. A lot of cancer in the family. And when I became a health coach, it was actually through an online thing from the States. And the more I researched how to protect myself from my mother's untimely end, the more it took me towards that vegan or plant-based way of life. So from a bodybuilder who was living on chicken and egg whites and broccoli, I actually switched to a whole food plant-based diet. And so that, for me, last year, to stand on stage at 60, but also as someone who was whole food plant-based, was awesome. Because I didn't know if I'd be able to keep my muscle without the animal protein. I didn't know whether I could build more without the animal protein. I didn't know if I could get lean enough to get on stage using plant protein. So that has been a really interesting part of my journey too. Yeah.
I gotta say, that was one of the myths that I believed too before I started this podcast, that you can't be vegan and you can't put on muscle, or you can't be a bodybuilder. But I have had, at least 2 or 3 dozen vegan bodybuilders on, and it just totally smashed that opinion of me. But I'm one of the people where cardio is my number one enemy. I hate cardio more than anything on the planet. And so someone who has ran marathons, I don't get it. I mean, I used to date someone who did half marathons, and they'd say, "Oh, you want to come out and go running with me?" I was like, unless I'm being chased by you with a knife, I'm not gonna go running with you. But when it comes to marathons, Uh, so after your first one, you just said, "Hey, that was great. Let's do it again."
Yeah. Yeah, I started running a little bit. I'd never been a runner or enjoyed running, and I just had a group of people I was training, and we were walking, and then I don't know. I know what happened. I started walking half marathons. So I had a group of girls I was training, and I took them out and we did some 5K and 10K walks. And then we walked a half marathon. And I was like, well, what's all the fuss about? That was easy. It was 3 hours or something. And so I did a couple more, and I'm very competitive with myself. And I couldn't do them any faster. Like I was walking, I could not do them any faster. So I had to start running. So I started running a bit, walking a bit, running a bit, walking a bit. And then because I'm competitive with myself and I had to keep beating my time, I ended up running the thing. And then I got to, I think I was 49, and I went, you know what? I'd love to run a full marathon. How hard can it be? I'd love to run one by the time I'm 50. So I did, and I did that first one. And of course, then the same thing happened. I had to do one faster. And then I had to do another one faster than that one. And it's just this competitive, it's my personality. So I ended up doing 8 of them. And with running, it became, it is true that once you get past that pain, you do get a big endorphin hit off it. And it did become my happy place. It became my soul time. And all of that training leading up for a marathon, because I work full time, I have a big client base, I'm always busy. So I would train at 5 or 6 in the morning. So it would be dark for a lot of the year. But I would never train with headphones or music. I would just go out and run, and it was like it was my soul time. It was a very cool time of reflection, and the endorphins nothing has ever given me that endorphin hit since that running gave me. Quite amazing.
I've experienced it a few times myself. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, for me, running, that is just painful. I think it was just from all the sports that I did, where all we did was running, and then it was just brutal. But one thing that I love to ask all of the health and fitness guests that I have on the podcast is, if you were to walk into a gym and there's 100 people in that gym, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape. Whether it comes down to, how their diet is, what muscles they trained, what exercises they do, how many reps they did of those exercises. So many little things add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. What was that experience like for you, finding out what works best for your body? Because I always sort of compare it to being like a mad scientist, where you have to constantly, try out new things to find out what works best for you.
Yeah, I agree, you do. And I was running marathons, but I had a significant bit of middle-age spread going on, and I think sometimes running those long distances, your body perceives it as a stressor. I think my body thought, what the shit is she running away from? And I think I was producing quite a lot of cortisol, and I was keeping a lot of belly fat, and it is quite interesting that since I stopped endurance running and got back into the gym, I am a lot leaner than I was when I was doing all of that cardio. So I know for me, strength training is the key. I train generally 4 sets. I always train to failure in that last set. Usually somewhere around, I don't know, 8 or 10 reps to failure. And then sometimes I'll do less reps for 4 or 6 weeks, just to build the weights up a little bit, build my strength up a little bit. But generally I'm in that kind of 8 to 10 reps. Always to failure. I train with weights. I've got a 5 or a 6 way split depending on my schedule. Just doing the weights. See, I love food. So just doing the weights doesn't keep me as lean as I would like. I have to mix up a little bit of cardio in there. So I generally do, I'll do 20 minutes on the Stairmaster. I do still run, but I only do 5Ks, and that would be maybe twice a week. We have a thing called the park runs. Do you have park runs in the US?
It sounds familiar, but what exactly is it? Just in case I know what it is.
Okay, they're worldwide. I think they're free. They're I can't remember the name of the guy who set them up now, but they're a free run for the community, and they're 5Ks. And I've done them in England, and I've done them here. They're in Australia. I'm sure they're in the States as well. So I do a park run once a week. They're on a Saturday, and it's quite cool because they give you a time, and they give you your time against the rest of the world, because there's people in Japan doing them, there's everywhere doing them. So the competitive part of me quite enjoys that. I do have to do some cardio, and definitely when I'm shredding for a competition, I definitely have to build more cardio in. But for me, it's not high intensity; it's slow, steady state. Twice a week, I might do a little bit of 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, just for my cardiovascular health, just to get my fitness up a little bit. But it's generally slow, steady state, 20 to 30 minutes, cross trainer, stairmaster, that kind of thing.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's all about figuring out, what works. And for some people, it takes them really early on to figure it out, but for some people, it takes years upon years. But it's all about that journey too. But one thing that I find is so fascinating that isn't really talked about as much as it should be is the genetic aspect when it comes to competing or just building muscle. Because I always say when everyone first walks into the gym, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much. And then they also have that one body part that really, really lags behind. I'll give you mine first. So my back, just because I had jobs all throughout college of lifting and loading. I worked in a lot of warehouses. So it's just like loading trucks, doing all that. You either got a really nice back or you quit. Those are like the two options that were presented to you. But I'm also 6'3", so I mean, my legs and my lower body are just shot. Where I mean, I could train them into oblivion, and they wouldn't. I don't gain an ounce. I mean, I still have friends to this day when I walk into the gym. They say, "Oh, hey Ryan, you plan on working legs anytime this year?" And then I'm just like, "Oh yeah, you guys are real funny." Or so yeah, it literally it's horrible. Calves are my absolute worst because that to me is the most genetic thing. Where I mean, I always said I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't gain an ounce. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
I'm a little bit the same. I quite enjoy training my upper body. I've had to work really hard on my shoulders. Genetically, I don't get a lot of muscle very easily. I work very, very hard for the little bit I have, and I constantly work to keep the bit that I have, as a postmenopausal woman, and what you said is really interesting about finding what works for you. But of course, what works for you changes, as through your different life stages, you have to adapt your exercise to fit in with that. So that's a whole nother thing. But I like to train upper body. I see a difference in my upper body quite easily. My legs, I have little chicken legs too. I'm not a woman who has a big backside and big thighs. When I hold fat, I hold belly fat, I hold back fat, I hold fat on my triceps, but not a lot in my lower half. So I've had to work really hard to get any kind of a quad sweep happening. I really do work my butt off. Hamstrings a bit better, but quads, they would be my worst. I naturally have a lot of definition in my calves, but I don't have a lot of size. But yeah, quads, I'm always trying to get my quads bigger, and always stopping myself from running too much and being aware of not eating into the little bit I have. Yeah.
I always say quads are one of our more popular answers, which I always find fascinating. But what would you say is probably the biggest nutritional change that you made when you really started to take things seriously in the gym?
I think many years ago, initially it was, I guess, learning the importance of protein. And, because as a woman, we tend to avoid it. You'll eat huge plates of salad, lots of green stuff, and can be a bit scared of eating protein. And I think the biggest thing I learned was that eating protein, if your metabolic rate is like a fire, eating protein is like putting petrol on that fire. It's an accelerant. You get a really good thermogenic effect from it. So I think that was one thing. The other thing was I was never someone who could face breakfast or eat early in the day. And I learned that for me, because I don't keep my muscle very well, intermittent fasting is not going to work for me. I'm going to very quickly eat into that little bit of muscle tissue I have. So I have to eat within 2 hours of getting up. and I have to eat every 3 to 3.5 hours, and every one of those meals has to have enough protein in. So I think that would be the thing. And then adapting that from an animal protein diet to a plant protein diet and still getting enough protein in without too much carbohydrate, that has taken me quite a little bit of juggling around to find what works for me.
Just
Yeah.
to bust the myth that everyone has, where it's like, oh, you can't get protein out of vegetables. What do you eat in your vegan lifestyle that gets you protein?
I do soy, so I do tofu because contrary to popular belief, eating too much tofu won't give you cancer. Eating too much tofu won't give you man boobs. There is a whole lot of urban myth around that just isn't true. So I use tofu. I use tempeh. Um, in New Zealand, we have some really good alternatives made from golden pea protein. I don't know if they're available in the States. I know in the States you can get seitan, which is it's a gluten wheat-based protein. I have to make my own. We don't get access to that here. I use plant-based protein powders. I generally have 1 or 2 plant-based protein shakes a day, and they are predominantly golden pea protein with a little bit of hemp or whatever mixed in. I use lentils. I use black beans. Those would probably be my main ones. Yeah.
And that's great because I mean, I love busting those myths, but I got to be 100% honest here. Do you miss at all having like a good steak or a good slice of chicken? Does that ever cross your head, or have you just adapted completely into the vegan lifestyle where you don't even think about it?
I don't even think about it now, but I used to. And there would be times, you see, I was conscious when I was bodybuilding. So I've only been vegan for 2 years. So when I was bodybuilding before that, I was aware of how much chicken I was eating, and so I would only buy organic chicken that I knew where it was coming from, and I knew the antibiotic levels and the hormone levels would be low. And when I first went vegan, there were a few times I thought, oh, you know what? I really feel like I do need some chicken. And I would go to the supermarket and I would get as far as kind of picking the pack up, and I couldn't do it because I just see the inflammation that it was causing in my body. And I also, you might want to cut this bit out, but I also just see it as a corpse now. When I look at meat or I look at chicken, I see it as a corpse. I see it as dead flesh, and I can't actually bring myself to eat it anymore. Same with fish, and that didn't happen straight away. Same with eggs. I just see an embryo. It's weird, but it was a mind switch that happened. And I'm not a vegan who goes out there and does animal rights stuff and jumps up and down at all. Don't get me wrong. It was purely a health thing. Yes, I am interested in animal welfare, but it was more of a health thing than that. The only thing in the 2 years that I have had, I used to absolutely adore cheese. So I was a real cheeseaholic. And it's taken me a while I've found a couple of vegan options which are acceptable. They're not the same. So I think the only things I've done in the 2 years is I've had a little bit of dairy, but that's come in the form of if I've been out and I've needed to grab a protein bar and there's nothing plant-based, I'll grab a whey-based protein bar. I've done that. But otherwise, no, I don't miss anything. And because I quite enjoy being creative in the kitchen, and I've found a whole lot of new foods and a whole lot of new ways. And I should say, by default, my husband is now off his medication for cholesterol, off his medication for high blood pressure, and his gout has gone. And that's by default. That's just by eating with me during the week. I know he's still eating meat at lunchtimes and what have you at work. So that's been quite interesting from his health perspective. Yeah.
I'm curious. So, what's the reason why in veganism they don't allow dairy? Is it just because of the way that they collect it from the cows, or the way that it's processed? What's the thing around dairy? Because it's not. It's not like dead animals or anything. So, what's the reasoning behind not allowing dairy?
Okay, so for veganism, it's because of Those cows, they're impregnated. They're kept pregnant for quite a long time. Actually, they found they can keep milking them while they're pregnant now, which is quite a. And then they have these babies, and the babies are taken away from them. The baby never gets to suckle from the cow. It's taken away, and it's either knocked on the head or it's raised to be another cow to produce more milk. For me, it's not that. For me, I read a thing called the China study, and some of the work they did, some of the research they did on casein, which is one of the proteins in milk, and you can feed cancer cells with that and get them to accelerate hugely. So I looked at all of the studies within the China study, and I saw the effect on human cells. Basically, if that cow is grass fed and it's living an idyllic life on a farm and it's happy as anything, the milk from that cow, when I drink it, it still has the hormones from that cow. So do I want the estrogen and the progesterone from that cow in my body? Not really. There's quite big links with breast cancer and various other cancers that involve hormones, like intrauterine cancer and ovarian cancer, and even prostate cancer too, actually. So, you look at that and cow's milk is for calves, not humans. We've adapted to be able to use it. We, like, for instance, people in Asian countries, if they're still eating a traditional diet, they actually can't cope with cow's milk because they don't have lactase, which is the enzyme that breaks it down. They're lactose intolerant. Most Asians are lactose intolerant originally. And that's because the human body actually wasn't designed. It's since the agricultural revolution of 10,000 years or whatever it is that our own enzymes and our own digestive system has been able to cope with it. We're not really designed to be having it. I don't have it just from looking at those studies. And I used to be having whey protein, as well as the fact that I loved cheese and I loved yogurt. I would be having whey protein once or twice a day. And yeah, the whey protein is better assimilated by the human body and probably better used for muscle growth. But you got to look at the other things that it's doing. And I think, I meet people where they are, and I think everybody has to do the research and look at it and come to their own opinion. I don't push my ideas down anybody's throat, but that's why personally I don't do dairy anymore.
And that's a great explanation, because I had no idea about most of that. So yeah, if anyone wants to look into that, I mean, I highly recommend that you do so. And yeah, definitely just form your own opinions. But it is very fascinating just how the different aspects when it comes to what people eat and stuff. I really do find that fascinating. But a myth and stereotype that we talked about this before we started recording, but I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram. But there's still so many women who unfortunately have that belief where if they go to the gym and they pick up one weight, they're going to put on 50 pounds or 20 kilograms overnight of muscle. And I always say to that, good luck. And second of all, I would spend my entire life savings just to talk to you for 5 minutes, because you have found the secret that me and everyone else, or a lot of people I should say, are looking for. Did you have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't have that fear, I bet being a trainer, you still hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that?
I didn't have that fear when I started, but because I've always liked the look of muscle on a woman, I like that look of shape, but yes, I do get that a lot of the time. And, quite frankly, as a woman, if you can put on half a kilo of muscle in a month, you are amazing. I work so hard to make such small gains. I bust my ass, it's just not going to happen. And what women don't realize is they think that to burn fat, they've got to do cardio. They don't realize the power of muscle tissue in creating heat and burning calories and therefore burning fat. The more muscle you have, the more you can eat without gaining fat. And I don't think don't think women generally realize the power of that. You go for a run and you're going to keep burning fat for maybe 4 hours afterwards. You train to failure in the gym, you're going to keep burning fat for 48 hours afterwards. And that, that's what I tell people. You are not going to get big or bulky. And people think they do, and there's some women who are a shorter, stockier build and have short muscle. Like short biceps, so quite compact. And when they start to train, they put on weight a little bit more quickly, muscle a little bit more quickly. And of course, what happens while they still have too much body fat sitting on top of that muscle, they think they're getting big, but actually they're not. And if they just follow the process and drop some of the body fat, underneath, they're not actually getting chunky at all. It's just that perception of getting bigger, but they've still got too much body fat sitting on the top. And once you get rid of that body fat, you're really not, you're not going to get bulky, I think is a word they like to use. You're not going to get bulky, I wish. Yeah.
Well, I always say bulky and tone should be erased from the English dictionary because, I mean, basically what you're saying from bulky is putting on muscle, and when you're saying toned, you're just saying that you want to have muscle. I mean, that's basically it's what it is. But I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've had to talk to people and just say, hey, it's not going to happen. Look at all of my guests that I've had on the podcast. Do they look like they're like the Incredible Hulk or something like that? And they've been working their, most of them have been working for so many years on their bodies. And I mean, if I can just bust that myth every single podcast, I do. But the one positive thing that I think impacts women so much more than men is just that confidence boost that working out gives you. I mean, we have heard so many stories on this podcast of women who have been able to, make life-changing decisions, or it's just helped them cope better. I mean, they become more assertive. It's just really helped them in their average day-to-day lives. And I always say that's the one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact your life in a positive way. How do you think that impact has been made in your life just from that confidence boost that you've gotten from working out and adapting this lifestyle?
Oh, I think it's been absolutely huge because I was, initially I had such a poor self-image, and I'm more confident and more empowered at 60 than I was at 20 or 30 or even in my early 40s. And that is just down to what I've done in the gym. Through my running years, yes, I got that endorphin hit and that happy hit from the running, but there is something about training with weights that is, it is just so empowering. Being strong in terms of strong in the gym and strong on the inside is something that the gym can give you that I don't think anything else can. And I just love the fact that I can feel this strong and feel this empowered at 60 years old and still know that I can improve my body each year. Even at 60, I can still change. I can look at something and go, oh, yeah, my glutes could be a little bit rounder, or my tie in here between my glutes and my hamstrings could be a little bit better, or my triceps could be a little bit more defined. I can still pick a body part, get into the gym and work it for 8 weeks and see a difference. How cool is that? You can literally change your body with weights. You can sculpt yourself into what you want to be. And that is just so empowering. That is so empowering because it empowers you on the inside. It's very cool.
And that is honestly what it's all about, because I like to say, the journey, especially if we're talking bodybuilding, I mean, is so much more mental than it is physical. And just having that self-confidence increased inside of you, I mean, you really feel like you can conquer the world. And I mean, that's why I love to stress, just working out, not just weight training, because everyone's different. Some people like yoga a little bit more, some people like other techniques, but just something just to get active. But a type of training that I've, sworn by basically since high school, and a lot of people on the podcast do it as well and they love it, is time under tension. Do you use a lot of time under tension in your training?
Absolutely. There is nothing I hate more than watching certain Instagram people doing their reps like this.
They're going to break the machine. Yep.
It is my pet hate. And it is one of the sayings, it is one of the things I say the most in the gym is time under tension gets results. And I'm very, very focused on, the eccentric part of so not the coming up, but the coming down against gravity, nice and slow. And absolutely, I agree with you completely. I'm very, very much about that. And also about, if you're using time under tension, you're also going to be using that mind muscle connection, because you're not doing anything by momentum. You're not swinging your whole body like this when you're doing lat pull downs. You're actually focusing on the lat. You're feeling that squeeze at the bottom between your shoulder blades, and then you're resisting all the way right back up to the top. And it's, it's on that resisting portion, or it's on that, if it's a bicep curl, it's not when you're coming up, it's the time under tension coming down. That's when you're breaking the little muscle cells. That's when they're going ping, 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 ping. And that's what's going to stimulate, your growth. So I absolutely passionately believe that. Yeah. And that's about training smart, isn't it? You see people training with ridiculous weights, which quite frankly is probably not going to be that good for their joints, with such terrible form. And I look at them and I think, what are you actually achieving? Not what you think you are. You're just not achieving what you think you are at all.
I see that too, where, I mean, it's like they're going to break the machine and you're just like, come on now, like it's not going to end well. It's like, just your chance of injury is astronomical when you're training like that. I mean, the body's not meant to do that. So yeah, time under tension, that's one thing that I really found where, I mean, I got a lot of crap from it from a lot of friends, because they didn't know that when they just saw me, like, it looked like I was struggling with like little weights, and they're like, oh, you having a little trouble there? And it's like, no, just trust me. But yeah, so it's definitely something that I think anyone who really is focusing on maybe building some muscle, they should definitely look into. But how long into your journey so how many years was it until you decided that you wanted to become a nutritionist and really get into that field?
Well, it was probably, I had been a personal trainer for probably 18 months to 2 years. And I'd built a successful business around that. And I was giving nutritional advice, because by that time I had done a couple of bodybuilding shows. And, when you do a show, you learn an awful lot. Not just about training, but about nutrition too. You learn an awful lot, that what people perceive to work and what really works. As a bodybuilder, it gives you a completely different slant on the process. And so I was using some of what I'd learned to help my clients, but I really felt like I wanted the credibility of a piece of paper behind me. So I went out, and like I said to you at the beginning, you can work your ass off in the gym, but if the food's not right, you are not going to see the results. I do believe it is, it's 80% nutrition. Honestly, yeah, you're not going to build muscle if you don't do the weights, but you're not going to build muscle if your nutrition isn't right. It is about 80% nutrition, whether it's fat loss or building muscle. So that was quite an interesting journey, because a lot of what I'd learned as a bodybuilder was not true to what you learn when you study mainstream nutrition. So I had to learn stuff to pass exams. And then at one stage I can remember thinking, oh, maybe they're right. Maybe we should be eating 60% of our calories from carbohydrates. Let me just try this on some of my clients, who immediately started to put weight on, and were like, what's going on here, Ginny? This isn't what we're normally doing. I'm like, yeah, okay, all right, we'll go back to what we were doing before. So I had to learn things from a completely different point of view. But what it did do was it gave me a depth of knowledge, particularly around micronutrients and around the importance of, iron and the importance of calcium. And it gave me a lot of knowledge around the different life stages and, for instance, what toddlers require, what kids require when they're growing, what teenagers require, what teenage mothers need. And then as we progress through. So it did give me a lot of knowledge that I didn't have. And I guess I was able to then put that together with what I had learned in my own journey as a personal trainer and nutritionist. And then, though, just 2 years ago, I had to change all of that again, because a lot of what had been pushed into me and that I'd learned and that I was telling clients, I suddenly realized I didn't believe anymore. And I suddenly believed that, a lot of the illnesses and the lifestyle diseases that I was seeing, if I took the animal proteins out, could be avoided. I've had amazing results plant-based with people with things like autoimmune diseases, so things like MS, things like lupus, things like polymyalgia, fibromyalgia, things like endometriosis, all of those things that involve inflammation in the body, you can dumb down and quiet down if you take the animal proteins out. So, but that, of course, is totally flying in the face of what I should be teaching as a mainstream nutritionist. So it's been quite conflicting and quite interesting, learning my own truth and learning how to meet people where they are in the middle, but maybe steer them towards being healthier in that way. Yeah.
Again, just like a lot of things, especially when you go to college and you learn some things. I remember I had that thing too, where I was like, that wasn't what I was taught when I was growing up, and just it can be really conflicting. So yeah, it's all about finding that. But we are a few days removed from New Year's. I mean, New Zealand is a day ahead of where I am, but we are just a few days, and I can bet in someone of your profession, this is kind of your hell week almost, with all the New Year's resolutioners that are flocking to the gym. But I mean, nothing makes me more sad when I see all these people talk about their New Year's resolutions and how they're going to, get healthier, how they're going to do this and that, and knowing that it's a minuscule percent of people that actually follow through with those and actually finish it. If I were to put a percentage, I'd say probably like 10% at the most. What advice do you like to try to give people that are just starting in the gym so that they do stick with it? Because so many people just start it and then they just lose interest, and it just becomes harder for them to maintain it.
Yeah, I agree. And I see, a lot of people who start with a hiss and a roar like a bull at a gate, and then either overdo it and get so sore that they don't want to go back, or get injured so that they don't want to go back. I would say that there's a lot of good programs and good information, including mine, online at the moment. So you can get yourself an online accountability coach or an online program, or go and find yourself a trainer. Particularly if you're new to the gym and you're a novice, get help. In my job as a nutritionist, when I initially see people, I spend a couple of hours with them and I go through all of their health and their goals and everything else, and we come up with a food plan that is specific to that person. And obviously it's not going to stay the same. It's going to evolve and change as their body changes and as their tastes and likes and dislikes change. But the biggest part of what I do for people, once they've got that initial consult out of the way, is my job is to be an accountability coach. They don't eat shit because they know they're seeing Ginny once a fortnight, and I take their body fat once a fortnight. And so accountability, I heard it said recently, it was on another podcast actually, and I've used it since quite a lot, that accountability is the glue that bonds commitment to results. And isn't that so true? For me, I have a gym buddy. She was a client of mine, but she has become my gym buddy, and we train together 5 days a week, and I will not let her down. If I've said I'm going to meet her at 6 a.m. in the gym, come hell or high water, I'll be there. Whereas if I have a busy day and I'm like, oh my God, I've got that podcast with Ryan and I've got to do this first and that first and that, it's very easy to not go or to go later. So my advice would be to get either an accountability coach or buddy up with somebody that's going to make you go and keep you accountable to going. The other thing is goal setting. Like when I set my goals for the year, I have 3 big, hairy, audacious goals for the year, and I make sure I have a reward for when I hit them. And then I set 3 goals for 90 days. And then every day I write down 3 goals that are going to get me one step closer to those 90-day goals. Now, for me, I've got, that there'll be a business goal in there. There'll be a family, house, relationship goal in there, but there'll also be my own fitness and nutrition goals in there as well. And so every day I make sure that I'm taking one step to get closer to that 90-day goal. And I do that every day. I do I call it daily intentions. Every morning I just sit down and I reflect on the day that's coming, what my intentions are. And sometimes my intentions are as simple as following my food plan and my exercise plan with integrity, because it's real easy to follow your food plan with not that extra little bit of something here or there, that extra bit of peanut butter here or there. It's really easy in the gym not to work to failure, or to say you're doing 12 reps but you only actually do 10, or you stop full of your full potential because instead of keeping that mind-muscle connection working and that visualization going, your mind's wandered. You're thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to be doing something with Ryan later today, instead of actually intentionally working each rep. So sometimes sorry, I'm rambling, aren't I?
No, absolutely. Keep going.
That's my
Keep
goal.
going.
My goal is to follow my food and exercise plan with integrity. And then I'll have, my 3 other goals. It might be to drink my water or do I don't know, bench press my weight or whatever it is. I'll have other goals. And that, I think that is I advise my clients to do that, to have a journal or a book. They have those 3 goals a day that move them towards those 3 90-day goals, and they tick them off each day. And I think that's incredibly empowering. But you have to do it. You have to do it, and you have to keep doing it.
My one thing, ramble as much as you want, because you make my job even easier. So you can talk. You can talk as much as you want. I am more than happy to just sit here the rest of the time in silence. But no, and yes, goal setting is so important, because so many people just fling themselves in there without even having a goal. They say, I'm just going to go and work out and see what happens. And then it doesn't tend to end well for them. But being that, you are 60 years old, and I bet you have a clientele that varies in ages. What would you say is some of the biggest differences that you have to account for when training? Let's say I'm 25. So if you were training someone that's my age, as opposed to someone who's 60, what would you say are probably some of the biggest changes that you have to factor into that when it comes to choosing a weight program, or when it comes to choosing a nutrition program that would work best for them?
I think the nutrition is easy, because the nutrition, your basal metabolic rate will be faster. You're a guy, so it's going to be faster anyway. But at 25, I do work with men, but I train predominantly women. I work predominantly with women. At 25, you're going to have a faster metabolism than you do at 60. At 25, you're less likely to get connective tissue injuries. You're less likely to get stress fractures than when you're 60. So I may have, if I was advising somebody who was 25, I might have a little bit more explosive or ballistic work in there, plyometric type work in there. But for us, we very easily create injuries by doing too much of that kind of thing. So that would be one of the biggest differences. And for women it's a bit different too, because we have that whole hormonal change that happens, and once we start to drop our insulin levels start to change, our estrogen levels start to change, our insulin levels are a little bit matched to that, so they start to change as well. So we start to process starches and sugars differently than we used to. So to keep our blood sugars stable, so that we can keep our bodies in a state that we're burning fat rather than burning into muscle, there are things that we have to change in our diet, which when you're younger, you don't have to worry about so much. That would be one of the biggest changes, I think. Yeah.
And it goes to like what we were talking about before. Everyone's body's different too. So, you could have a 60-year-old who could, just work out as good as a 25-year-old. It really just depends on so many factors. But yeah, generally speaking. But I mean, this is a question that I'm going to get, I'm going to get hate for if I don't ask it, because I mean, every guy out there, biceps are the number one thing that they want. I mean, especially going into the New Year's. I mean, everyone wants that. I mean, guys are just, they kill for that. I mean, that's basically how guys identify each other. What do you do for arms, and what do you like to recommend people to grow biceps?
I treat them as any other body part. I generally, sometimes I do back and biceps together. So I'm pre-exhausting the biceps with the back work. Sometimes I do an arms day where I do biceps and triceps together. Again, I don't do more than maybe 4 exercises, maybe 4 or 5. And sometimes I do 4 sets, sometimes I do 5 sets. I work to failure. I pretty much treat them as any other body part. I would generally see if I would generally, for me, my biceps, you can't see I've got a jacket on, but my biceps are good because I rode horses for a living. So you've got that pull motion, you've got horses pulling against you a lot of the time. So I naturally already had a bit of biceps. So my biceps, I don't need to focus on too much.
Take the jacket off. Let's see the gun show.
I do focus on my shoulders, and I don't know.
Yeah, look at that. 60 years old. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous.
So I do the body parts that fall backwards a little bit, and then I need to work harder on. I train twice a week. So shoulders and quads, I'll quite often train twice a week. So I might train them on a Monday and a Friday. So they've got a good gap in between, but I hit them twice a week. Yeah. That's about it, really. I don't have any really. And I mean, of course, you can use different exercises to hit different parts of the bicep. So it's all about mixing it up, isn't it? It's mixing it up and hitting those muscle fibers and making them work for their living.
I always say too, you got to work on your triceps too, because I mean, if you just do, that's one of the best things too. Where if you have a nice looking tricep, it really helps with the illusion that you have really nice arms. So that's one thing that I say all the time as well. But if there's one body part that you are looking to in the next year really grow and develop the most, other than maybe the one that didn't take off as well, what's one body part that you're looking forward to training the most over the next year?
Quads.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Same with everyone. I mean, Jesus, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Delts and quads, yeah. Delts and quads. But see, a lot of girls, it's really fashionable to want to grow your glutes, isn't it? Like they get butt implants. That's a Kardashian thing. Mm-hmm. So it's very fashionable. I see lots of young girls in the gym, hip thrusting on the Smith machine, or they're using the bottom roller of the leg curl to hip thrust, and they've got their booty bands out. And I'm like, sorry, girls, booty bands, that's not going to do it. You just got to get some serious weight on those babies. But glutes are very fashionable to grow for women at the moment.
So if you want to really embarrass us all, what are some of your best lifts that you've done in the gym?
No, I wouldn't. I'm not strong.
For the average 60-year-old woman, I'd say you probably are.
No, I don't think I'm very strong at all, and but I use technique. So, and mine will all be in kilos, not pounds.
No, that's fine. No, it's just, I can't. I mean, just being at 60, if I looked anywhere near like that, I mean, I would be happy. I would be so happy. And it just shows to the hard work and dedication. But if we were also to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your life? Where would you like to be at in your health and fitness journey? What are some goals? We talked about goal setting, but what are some goals that you'd like to have achieved if we were to talk a year from today?
Okay. So at the moment, one of my main focuses is building my online presence. So it was timely that you asked me to do this. I'm developed a year-long course for women over 40, and it's all about building muscle. It's all about nutrition. It's all about mindset. And so my goal, one of my primary goals, I spend a lot of time. I would see about 60 clients a week for nutrition. And that's great. I love seeing them. But it's time for me to move away from that one-on-one work and take my work online and more into group situations, which I love. I really love coaching groups and talking shit with people like this. I talk shit. I've got about 2 different programs going at the moment where I get to talk to them for an hour about food or weights or whatever it is, and I love that. And you're impacting 80 people at once instead of one, you know. So my big goal is in a year's time, I would like to be, do I dare say this? I would like to be not seeing any one-on-one clients. I might do a little bit of online coaching to VIP clients one-on-one, but I would like to be not doing that anymore. I would like to win the nationals over 60 class, or maybe even win the over 50s class next year, or well, actually I'd like to do that this year, and that is at the end of October. So my next goal, I will be competing at the end of April to qualify. So last year I qualified, but I couldn't compete because my daughter got married on the same weekend as the nationals. So my goal is to win the nationals for over 60-year-olds in New Zealand in the federation that I compete with.
On average, how long do you prep for before a show? Did you have like an average that you like to try to do?
I don't find 12 weeks is normally not enough for me, because I have to work hard to get that lean. My body doesn't actually, I'm not someone who can get that lean and stay there. My body doesn't like to be down there. So I like to allow, I'll be starting now for that show in April. So that's about 16, 17 weeks away. And I think that's a good time. More than that's too long. And if I start now, I can still kind of have a bit of a cheat meal once a week and not make it too hard in terms of how much cardio I need to do. I try to minimize the cardio because I really don't want to lose any muscle. And I like to have quite a long shred so that I've got enough calories in there that I'm not going to lose muscle. In fact, the last couple of shreds I've done, I've gained muscle, and that is my goal. Like if I can keep or gain a little bit of muscle on each shred. So about that 16, 17 weeks is good.
That's about a good average that we get a lot. But now just the last few questions before we wrap things up. So if you could change one thing about, the health and fitness lifestyle, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
What would be the one thing that I'd like to see changed? I would like to see changed people, because our lives are so automated, people want a quick fix. I would like to see the end of 4-week challenges, 8-week challenges, 12-week challenges, where people bust a gut and then put it all back on again, because that would be my pet hate. My goal for every client I work with isn't how fast we can affect transformational change. It's that in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, we've kept that change. So, it's not about motivation. It's not about discipline. It's about creating new habits that last a lifetime. Because if you don't do that, if you don't change your relationship with food, if you don't create good habits around your exercise, then all you're doing, it's just a quick fix, hey, and then you're back. And I hate all the things, and I guess it's worse now. I just sound like old, don't I? It's worse now we've got the internet. But all the fad things that come through in terms of paleo or keto or whatever it is, I hate all of that. I want people to make long-term changes, and I know it sounds cliched, but I want long-term changes that give sustainable results where people can still enjoy life. Life is too short not to be able to celebrate it with food, but yeah, we need those long-term changes in place.
That is the biggest struggle with people, especially with my generation, faces that, yeah, I am part of that generation where everyone wants everything now and they want it yesterday. But if you're looking to lose weight or get in shape, that is the one thing that's not going to happen. I mean, you are going to have to put in the time and effort, and a lot of people definitely do struggle with that. But I mean, there are just so many things that happen when you start to adapt this lifestyle that really remain positive. But the one negative thing that I have found is that, I mean, you're constantly having to change wardrobes at times. If you're getting bigger and stronger, really the variation. How do you cope with that, knowing, especially like especially now that you're going into a prep? I mean, you're going to need basically a whole different change of wardrobe.
Well, that's as a woman, I love shopping. So what's not to love? Um, no, I have a reasonable, because I go through this process a couple of times a year. I have a reasonable kind of a show end of my wardrobe and a prepping end of my wardrobe and a bulking end of my wardrobe. So and it's not a huge change for me. It's not like I have to drop, 10 kilos or anything. I basically, it's barely 5 kilos, so it's barely 10 pounds. So it's not a huge amount for me. But yeah, over the years, I always say to people, never keep your fat clothes, biff them. You don't want to keep you maybe keep one pair of jeans to go, hey, look, I used to wear these, but otherwise you biff it because you don't want to be wearing it again. Um, and I don't know, what do you call second-hand shops there? Do you call them op shops?
It's usually Goodwill is what we call it.
Goodwill. Yeah, so here we call them op shops, which is like an opportunity shop. But I alluded earlier that I avoid packaging and stuff, and I like to avoid putting things into the landfill. So I buy a lot of clothes from the Goodwill shop, and I get some magical finds out of there for a couple of dollars.
There are
And
unknown treasures there. I always say that to anyone who's talking about that. It's like you can definitely make a huge saving. You can really save a ton of money if you find the right stuff there. I mean, I've always said that, and yeah, if there's one thing you get out of this podcast is that you can find treasures at Goodwill. It's probably the one thing that I'm trying to say here. But if
it's a gold mine. You
yeah.
can find designer stuff in there. And the thing is, you buy it and you wear it for a season and you put it back in there and let someone else enjoy it,
Yep.
It's very cool.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Now, lastly, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to my husband, who is my number one supporter. He's been brilliant through my years of being bulimic and messed up in the head with food, to my transformation from horses to training. He's been my rock. My daughter Francesca, who's just got married, and my son who lives in London, Barnaby. Yeah, my family are everything. And to my couple of training buddies, Lorinda and Faith. Yeah. Who keep me accountable.
Can I just say that Barnaby is one of the greatest names I've ever heard in my entire life? That's awesome. No, yeah, that is great. So a shout out especially to Barnaby. I got to give a shout out to that, because that is just such a great name. And everyone, go and give her a follow, and I'll leave a link to all of her stuff down below. Where can people find your programs, and if they're interested?
GinnyMcArthur.com. There's a couple of links on the homepage there which will connect you with me. Facebook, Ginny McArthur, and Instagram at Ginny McArthur. And what else is there? Are there any other grams? I don't know.
I mean, they invent one like every other day, so I mean, we're probably missing out on like 500 of them. But it's always ever evolved. But I'll leave a link to all those main ones down below. And again, Jenny, we cannot thank you enough for coming on, and most importantly, completing the Anglophobe trifecta that I've been trying to get. And again, thank you so much for coming on. And everyone, go and give her a follow. I mean, you will be motivated to get off the couch and stop eating those Twinkies, and when you realize that she's 60 years old, and it's just ridiculous. And again, Jenny, we cannot thank you enough for coming on. It was so great having you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Ryan.
Absolutely. Well, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the Spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.